Hi, my name is Luke, and I'm an intern at Eline Media. Today I'm going to be doing a video on common design pitfalls that new Gamestar mechanic users often fall into when they're designing games for the first time. And most importantly, what you can do as a facilitator who might not necessarily be the most avid gamer to still diagnose and come up with solutions to these design pitfalls. And my hope in doing this video is that you'll not only be able to see these design pitfalls and squash them, but also that you'll see this framework that I present and be able to apply it to any design issue that you might see. So the first design pitfall I'm going to be discussing today is what I like to call the spam shooter. So often what kids will do when they first start designing a game is place a whole bunch of enemies right in front of an avatar's line of fire, kind of like this. So you probably, if you've started facilitating a Gamestar mechanic, noticed some of these games already. And these games are a problem from a design standpoint because what the player can start doing is essentially just hold down one button and complete their game by not moving their avatar and just holding down spacebar. So in terms of what you can do to combat this kind of issue, there's actually a framework involving the game design elements, the 5 elements of game design. So the first element to employ when facilitating your student's game, in this case could be components. So components refers to the pieces in his game, and it can also refer to sprite behavior, which is important in this game because the sprite behavior isn't causing the avatar to do anything. In fact, it's contributing to his ability to just stand there and shoot. So something you might want to ask your student is, well, first just make the basic observation that the components of your game are not very varied and they're not forcing the avatar to move anywhere. If you make that basic observation and then ask the student, how do you think changing the space of this game will add additional challenge, that will most likely get a productive conversation started. The second element that you can employ to ultimately make your student's game better is the element of space. So space refers to how the actual environment of his game is set up. So if you look here, you can see that the space of this game is very wide open, which isn't always bad in some cases, but in the context of this game, the wide openness of the level allows the avatar to hit every single enemy from his blaster just from where he's standing. So as a facilitator, you can ask your student, how do you think the space of your game is contributing to the avatar's ability just to sort of spam these blaster shots? Another element to ask your student about is the element of goals. So let's say your student's made some changes to his game based off the previous elements we've talked about, but there still seems to be something not quite right about it in terms of challenge. It doesn't seem like it's hard enough to blast the enemies, and if blasting the enemies is the ultimate goal of this game and defeating them isn't very hard, then chances are this game isn't going to be very fun. So something you can have your student think about is changing the goal of his game. So let's say you were to change this game to a point counter, for example. The enemies would no longer become the end goal, obviously. They would more become the obstacles that prevent the avatar from collecting the coins. This might be a better role for the enemy sprites if they are so easy to defeat. So asking your student to consider a goal change in this situation might ultimately lead to a better game. The final element to ask your student about regards the mechanics of his game. So you can ask him what he actually wants the player to be doing And it's unlikely that any student will say, hey, I want my game to be about an avatar standing and shooting, right? Chances are, if you ask him about his game mechanics, ask him to think about what he wants the player to be doing, that'll get him thinking about some ideas for what the avatar, he wants the avatar to try and be doing in terms of blasting or collecting or other types of mechanics. So let's look at a second design pitfall. This design pitfall is when a student has randomly moving enemies in a wide open space. So you can see in this game, you have a ton of enemies, and sort of a simple run through of the elements of game design, like last time, would quickly have you find that the space is too wide open, the components are all out of whack because there's too many, and they're moving randomly. So you run through these components asking your student various questions based on the space of the game, the components of the game. And then, in a case like this, there might not even be enough in this type of game for him to iterate further on these elements. What might be a good idea is to have him try and find more of an identity for this game, so what he wants this game to be about. So let's say he does that and comes back and tells you he wants a game similar to Pac-Man, but he also says the one difference he wants to be in his game is that there's teleporters. So he wants this game to basically be Pac-Man but with teleporters. So he makes his own version, and then you can also go through the framework again. How similar is this game in Pac-Man to space, goals, rules, and components? And then you can look at his specific idea, his specific change to Pac-Man, which is the teleporters, and look at how well this idea fits in with the rest of this game. In this case, it actually works pretty well, because the teleporters can be used to escape from enemies if the player is cornered. And notice he was able to keep his randomly moving enemies from the first game, but because the space is more well thought out, it actually works quite well. So I hope looking at these two types of design pitfalls was useful, and if there are any other design pitfalls that you notice your kids making as a teacher or facilitator, feel free to comment below, and hey, it might warrant a new video discussing what you could do about that if you haven't already solved the problem. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos on the Gamestar Mechanic YouTube channel.